So I'm sitting down here in my room making a pedal. I got this crazy light on. And anyhow, I wanted to talk, I want to just kind of ramble at you. And if you don't want to hear ramble, I get it. See you later. Thanks for checking in. Really appreciate you being here. But I want to talk a bit about something that, first of all, raise your hand if you're sick of hearing about AI. Everything's AI. I use AI a decent amount in my day job. I've seen it bring me speedy results. I've seen it confuse me. I've seen it, do the same for others. But I find it. I'm not the foremost expert to argue philosophy or like techno theology and like all sorts of wild things that we can concoct around it. But I want to suggest to you that your favorite pundit, or maybe even more to my point, the office dude or dudette who riffs on their thoughts on AI, probably isn't the best person to debate it either. Because most of us, myself included, do a pretty bad job of being aware of our argumentation's flaws and being aware of where our bias or biases is such a overused, overwrought term these days, but it's like we do a bad job of recognizing the flaws in our logic. We also do a bad job of recognizing when we are just kind of presenting opinion or feelings as opinion, and then some of us, the trickiest among us, have whittled this down to a fine science of intellectualizing these things, but it doesn't change the base for them. And I just wanted to, it occurred to me today, right, that there's this thing in CPU architecture called predictive branching. And I remember learning about this in, we're talking probably like 2011, 2010. I was taking a class on CPUs, right? I did a degree in electrical engineering, studying silicon design for at least part of it. And I just remember hearing about this idea of predictive branching, where the computer will look at machine code and then say, well, we probably have two different options here. And I'm simplifying this because, I've got buds who now went on to work at Intel and Apple and other big silicon manufacturers, and this is really advanced and has been for probably decades, I think. But basically, the CPU, right, the central thinking rock silicon that we taught to think in your computer, will kind of play out both scenarios and then guess which one is more likely given the instructions that it has been given up until this point. And I remember thinking about that and going, okay, that's interesting. Yeah, I bet I could do that. And then I remember hearing the accuracy with which it is done. It's 95%. Like think about that. Your CPU is to some degree preemptively guessing with a 95% accuracy what you are going to do next. Now, there's a lot of layers in there. To say what you are going to do next makes it sound like, like your computer is just sitting there going, Neil is about to open this video game and take this many sips of his soda and eat this many crackers. It's not that whittled down, right? We're talking machine code as in like, should we load something from this memory address or this memory address? And it gets it wrong sometimes, 5%. If that 5% was really critical, like that may hurt, though the average user is not doing anything that this is really gonna, like, ruin their lives over, or anything. But I was just thinking about that today, right? And thinking about how the conversations I've had around AI, and like all the, like, soldering, unless you think I'm toking it up in here. Nope. Not even getting high on solder fumes because I don't want to breathe in flux. Um, I just think a lot of the arguments around AI are bad, uh, because they really come down to things where it's like, well, it can't be that good at predicting. Or I had a friend today tell me, and I'm not looking to argue with this friend, but saying, well, I do hardware. I can understand how AI can do software because he's used AI to do some software, and he's like, that's amazing, but we can't do that with hardware because it's physical. It's talking about placement. I'm just sitting there and thinking, yeah, we can. At some point, aren't we talking about everything being a repeatable process? We call those algorithms. We call those repeatable processes that we can, at various points, evaluate the current state of a thing and then decide what do we want to do with it. Obviously, there are, very complex situations, and things like, what is it, the traveling salesman problem, right? Of, like, map the shortest point. My point being, there are definitely systems that are provably and demonstrably impossible to solve. So I'm not saying that everything could be AIified or algorithmized, um, but I just find it fascinating that those aren't the arguments that I hear people approaching with sometimes. Sometimes they are, but sometimes when it's like AI is just bad, or AI is dumb, or what happens when we give everyone AI and then everyone thinks they're an engineer. An analogy I heard someone use recently that made me chuckle, because I'm like, this is a worthwhile point that we should go through. They said, well, if we give everyone in a given company AI and then said, now you're all coders, that sounded to this person like we just handed everyone a gun and said, now you're all cops. And I was like, I like that. I like that because it points at, uh, I think, some good realities that there are differences in how you approach. It's not just like, hey kid, here's a keyboard, now you're a coder, right? Hey kid, here's an AI, now you're a coder. Um, but I've been disappointed sometimes to hear people then go on to talk about, like, well, we just can't let anyone in the code. Why not? Like, aren't you anyone? Well, I know what I'm doing. Okay. Says who? Like, let's go down that path. How do we know that you are who you say you are? Uh, what's that Eminem line? Right? Like, I am whatever I say I am. If I wasn't, then why would I say I am? So, I I think it's interesting to look at that and then to think, well, there must be more to it, for both sides, right? And I just think it's fascinating to see that a lot of it comes down to, for me, this is, my subjective judgment, and this is an off the cuff video, but I've been thinking about this. I wanted to get this out there, that I would challenge you that if you are somebody who says AI is like the next, like, just absolutely, it's without a doubt, without an equal, going to be the biggest thing ever for everyone, all the time, all the place. That's a poor understood epistemology. what does that mean to you to actually have that tool in your life? Why? Like, and not just like, well, because it's cool, right? But does it mean you'll be able to explore your ideas better? Do you think that it empowers people who have otherwise been somehow, disenfranchised from the coding, world, or the access to create products? Uh, because I also have the same opinion when I meet people who say AI is crap, it's a fad, it's going to go away. Uh, both sides have interesting points, right? Bringing up something like, well, Anthropic and some of these places are just burning money right now. Yeah, yeah, they totally are. And the idea that you can use as much of their services for as little as we're paying, I would expect that some of these services could go up to like $500 to $1,000, where you're only paying maybe $50 to $100 a month right now. $1,000 a month for a service? Yikes, that's a lot. If it you know improves your velocity and really is great, maybe. Um, if you went back 500 years and told people how much money we spend on phones and computers and electronics, they might also look at you and go, well, yeah, those things look amazing, but aren't they just like fancy rocks? You taught silicon how to think and it does things for you? Like, that's weird. Maybe they'd be addicted. Um, Probably addicted. Yuck. Um, but I just wanted to make this video because I think that it is really important to explore, how do you know the thing you know? How did you come to know that, right? If you think AI is stupid, uh, so be it. It's not that saying, well, how do you know that, is my passive aggressive or indirect way of saying you're wrong, and I just, want to find some intellectualized way to sound nice as I challenge that. I want you to tell me more, but I want you to do the preparatory groundwork of knowing how you came to believe that, and not expect me to just meet you there and say, oh yeah, like AI is bad or AI is good. Sweet, we're done. Um, I had a wild experience recently. I've just been thinking about a lot at work, that I was sitting there at my desk, and there were two there were there were basically like two conversations happening kind of around me that I kind of like drifted in and out of. I'm just sitting there working, or I don't know, eating food or something, uh, and one of them was, AI is stupid, and the it was very much like, well, we can't give AI to everyone because you still need to know how to code, and people are just going to make terrible decisions, and it's just going to be bad. And then the other conversation was, think about how powerful AI is, and that when we give people access to this, more people can do more interesting stuff. I think they're both, well, right's the wrong term, but I think they both have merit. But the part that I found was interesting was, I think they were both conversations where people were, uh, without awareness of doing so, people were presenting personal opinion and personal feeling as an intellectual argument. Maybe I'm splitting hairs here. Maybe that's what all intellectual argument is to some degree, and I don't know. There's some branch of philosophy or something, probably goes into why this is or isn't thing. I'm not trained in any of it. Maybe I'm doing it myself, ironically. I'm a human. What you gonna do? But I found it interesting that a lot of the the fear, I think I would describe it, of people saying we can't give everyone AI and just say like everyone use AI. Like I think it was coming from a lot of this. Well, if the cost of coding goes down to zero, I have spent my life, I mean, and even from perspective of Neil Oler, I have spent almost 20 years being a expensive bottleneck, being an expensive fulcrum, uh, being an expensive tool uh, to help people take ideas and turn them into coded functional products, right? Software. And a lot of the argumentation around I don't like this, I think this is bad. I I wonder. I want to say I think as in I'm fairly confident, but I may be 6 or 7 out of 10 confident this is the case. So very open to changing my mind. Um, I think these things come from a sense of existential dread that if I'm no longer able to do the thing that I've trained myself to do, there's a unrealized, unconscious uh, background process, small voice in my head that says, "What am I if I'm not that thing?" It's a good question. What am I? what what am I if I'm not a programmer? Um, I feel also, by the way, sometimes very pissed off by this idea, um, which again, please understand whenever you feel anger, that's not where you stop in the exploring of your ideas because there's always something underneath the anger. Uh, and as I've tried to dig down, I really feel like, well, for a long time, still to this day, I have felt like the odd man out of engineering because I'm much more like building effects pedals and soldering I can tell you what components do and I can look at schematics, I can look at software and figure stuff out, but I'm not necessarily the quickest person in the room to do so. For me, it's much more about like curiosity and just tinkering with stuff because it satisfies an itch in my head and my heart to just explore and just, yeah, experience the world that way. And that has often bumped up against the expectations of, I mean, call it corporate culture or career progression or LinkedIn uh, baloney. Uh, but it's not, I am not always the most effective or yeah, I'm not always the fastest coder. I'm not always the fastest guy because my mind is jumping all over the place. Even with the last few years of being on Adderall and finding that that does help me to focus, uh, still in some cases my mind goes, good, now we can focus. Let's think about the pedal we'd like to build. Let's think about 3D printed stuff, or I don't know, like here's a drawing I have just sitting on my floor of a design of a spinning Leslie speaker cab to get, you know, Doppler effect kind of stuff from guitar cabinets, and this is what my mind does. And it does this in the middle of, hey buddy, you're supposed to be coding the feature that, you know, the guys who pay you a paycheck, that's what they want. They don't care about your speaker cab idea. Which, why should they, right? Like, anyhow, the thing that pisses me off about all this is that I feel like AI has a chance to be able to help me to refine and to be able to focus down some of these tasks that have the mundane things. The mundane things like, how do we build, you know, a button in this code base or in this language? I'm going, I don't I don't care. I don't care to think about that. I rather just think the button serves a purpose to the user and I move on. And if it's the best example of a button, or it should work, right? Anything you make should work. But does it need to be like this, like academically rigorously tested theoretical perfection? I don't care. And and that puts me at odds with many people in my field. Um, Perhaps somewhat because I am at odds with them, and also perhaps somewhat because maybe I just stink at articulating the idea that I'm not suggesting we embrace mediocrity, but I am suggesting that we remember that perfection is the enemy of good. And so I'm looking for good enough. Some of that comes from ADHD, uh, one of the hallmarks thereof. And so, in as far as I can learn to do better there, I need to learn to do better. But I just think that that's interesting. And the place where it irritates me is now 20 years into trying to go, okay, I got to be a better coder, got to be more, uh, you know, efficient and, throughput and all this stuff. And I feel like I've been like, yeah, creativity. Like, no, no, no. Like, I don't have time. I've tried to be creative before and very much had my wrist slap at various places, or at least what it felt like. No, don't do that. Don't do that. That's not your job. And now we come to this place going, the cost of coding is going to zero. Now you can embrace your creativity. Going, huh? Yeah. Well, it kind of feels like I sold my creativity because that's what was expected of me, which is a narrative in my head. It Whether it's helpful or not is up to me. It's not the objective truth, but it just is interesting to see that. Um, so I maybe all this to maybe come back around to the predictive branching, and some of that is that while I do think AI is an amazing new tool, and I'd like to talk about it more. If you've enjoyed this, yeah, I'd love to hear from you in the comments. I don't necessarily mean to talk about like some hot button topic, because it is hot button, but because I just think that uh, there's a lot to explore here that people don't really go into because they're still thinking about they're still thinking about the nuts and bolts of it, and not realizing that a lot of their epistemological backing is lies in a place that is unaware to themselves, or they are unaware thereof. And so I really do. I think AI has a potential to actually make us better humans, and not in some cyborg beep boop. Now I don't have to write love poems for my lover anymore. How convenient. No, no, no. But I think that going through the process of thinking, I need to learn how to explain something to a audience of one, an agent, whatever. But I need to be able to explain something to an audience that doesn't have the context that I have in my head. And how do I work backwards to say, if that's, if this is the understanding I want this to be mutually understood between us, how do I work backwards from there and think, how do I explain context and give the right details and guide this person along the process so that they understand what I mean? That sounds like what I tried to do in my more clear-headed moments of being married or being in a friendship or with children or parents or whatever. Yeah, like I think a lot of miscommunication comes from people just going, well, what the heck's your problem? I know I'm right in my head. If you would just effectively read my mind, you'd see that you're doing it the stupid way and I'm correct. But AI has a delightful nonchalance about just pointing out, either in result or in the actual conversation, I don't know what you're talking about. It will fake like it does, and it will make assumptions in a I'm just trying to predict, right? It's pretty good at predicting next branches, maybe even better so than your CPU, or at least at a more natural language looking, almost human, we've crossed the uncanny valley way. By the end, it's a predictor of what response will make you happy. And if you haven't explained yourself well, don't be surprised when you don't get a response that really satisfies. I think AI is a really powerful thing, but I think that there are a lot of arguments I hear, and maybe maybe just reinforces how much the study of how do I explain ideas and how do I engage people in their ideas and invite them to engage with mine. That is, you want a superpower that really would change the world? There's one for you. And it's way more available than laser vision or uh, super mutant healing ability, or, controlling, you know, bending spoons with your mind. Um, think about that. Think about how do I how did I come to the opinions I have now about AI and what it's going to do? Uh, it's not that you're right or you're wrong, but understanding how you came to believe those will give you a greater opportunity to engage in conversations with people about those things, so that you have a chance to not argue past each other and just kind of, argue in circles, but not really improve on understanding. Try it out. I know epistemology is perhaps a boringly large word. Uh, it certainly feels like, I got a word of the day calendar and just had that one word for the past couple years. I blame slash admire Peter Boghossian, some of those guys for helping to bring that to me. But consider it. Just wherever you are and whatever you're thinking, AI happens to be the topic on my mind. But just pause and think, like, how do I really know that this isn't just a fear made manifest? And I would have a hard time, like, just getting someone saying, well, I'm scared. Aren't you scared? About what? What should I be scared about? And you start to go down the rabbit hole of, oh, well, I can't just like transfer my fear to people. I mean, you if you have a scary look on your face and then you just walk up to someone, they may go, oh, that's a physiological response to, well, if that person looks scared, I should probably be scared too. And then they might pause and look around and go, wait, there's nothing to back up that face. What's your deal? A lot of conversations about hot topics, AI, politics, etc., are kind of like that. You walk up to someone, you have the face and go, oh my gosh, topic X. And they go, oh, topic X. And they may run with it, and you may be speaking about the same topic, but you're running in opposite directions and you don't realize it. There's just so many things about pausing to say, where am I coming from? Why do I, like, how did I come to this feeling set about this topic? So explore that. Think about that. Leave the comment. Please leave a comment below as to what topics you want to explore that way. No, I mean, like I'd love to explore them with you, but just what are the topics you go, yeah, that's how did I come to believe that? Or maybe leave topics you're like, I don't need to explore because these are the ones I'm just right on. Cool. How do you know?